I'm going to be reading today, and there's just reasons for that, okay? The term recovery eventually became a term that I didn't identify particularly well with, and still don't. After certain learnings, I don't feel that I've actually yet read any real evidence from the biomedical model, science, doctors, research that can conclusively prove that I do have some kind of brain disease and a mental illness. For me, the term recovery doesn't fit because nobody has managed to prove to me yet that I am or was ever sick. So I'm just going to get onto it now. This is Phoebe Kingston Part 2, recovery in 10 minutes. So the most important starting point for me to enable me to commence a recovery, the only thing I needed first was to find and hold hope. So hope for myself, my strengths, my abilities, my potential and my future. And an important point that I'm going to make before I go on is that there's this common idea that we've got to achieve some stability before we can actually begin recovery. And I don't think that's an absolute requirement for everyone in every circumstance. I feel that it's a myth that everyone needs to be stable before they can commence any kind of real recovery. If we sit around waiting for a solid state of stability, we could just be waiting forever. Life will always throw curveballs here and there, and that's what real life is like. We can't make a life that's permanently easier and create a level of stability that's ultimately impenetrable because we're so well recovered and stable. So I think trying to create that and even begin in that way from the start doesn't really make any sense to me now. For me, the time to start recovery is always now. The time is now. We can actually start recovery in our most challenging times. We can be in the middle of a huge emotional crisis, and we can still identify a part of ourselves that we want to build on and identify this wonderful life that we want to have and who we want to be and why. And so I think that some of those meaningful parts of recovery, those contemplative stages, just don't require any level of stability. So for me, starting a recovery journey was really about discovery, and I actually prefer the term discovery to recovery. I'll just use them interchangeably, but I felt that I had a discovery journey, not a recovery journey. And I am hopefully going to be publishing my book on what I postulate to be a recovery framework called re-identification, but that is not for this lecture. And so I was never going to recover to who I was before I had all my lived experience, which is what the term recover really means. And I postulate that that really happens for anyone. Well, for anyone with lived experience, I don't think they go back to who they were before. Rehabilitation often gets rebadged as recovery. It's not the same thing. If I break my leg, then I can expect a treatment that's going to return me to exactly how I was walking before. I just want to walk in the same way I did before, and usually that's what's happened. And the services do acknowledge this, but they acknowledge it in a deficits-based manner, in which they tell us that life will always be more challenging now. Yes. That can still be enjoyed. Yes. And then encourage us to be realistic and compromise our ambitions and dreams in order to maintain stability. That may be true for some things, some of the time. I don't think it's what we should be focusing on as a blanket approach. I believe that services should offer people more than a second-rate life in which to play it safe. We should offer a genuinely strengths-based approach in which people are supported towards self-mastery and achieving whatever they truly desire, even if that's risky, because that's authentic living, and we deserve it as much as anybody else. You will get to make mistakes here and there, and people don't go, oh, it's because of, so I should just be able to make mistakes in my life too. It's not actually relevant to, my mental illness. It's just that I just need to live in the same way that you do. Someone did mention to me in one of the assessments that this term of let's find a realistic goal, and I did make quite a big comment there. But I feel that what's realistic is for myself to judge and no one else. That's my judgment as to what's realistic for me. And if I haven't listened to what was realistic, I just probably wouldn't be here now. So I'm very, very passionate about the huge goals that we can set. And I think that some clinicians don't actually acknowledge that or understand sometimes that life can actually be better after all this than before. So yes, I am different now, not in a compromised way. I'm actually in the best position relating to meaningful things than I have ever been in before in my life. I've learned so much about myself, my relationships, my world, my view of it and my place in it, that I don't think there's anything that I can't work through to get exactly to where I want to be. So, what does personal recovery and discovery really mean after all this? Well, it's really about deep self-exploration. And a large part of that is starting by clearly identifying lots of different parts of myself which had always existed, but consciously deciding which of those aspects of myself I liked and wished to retain and would be useful to me moving forward into the new me, my new life. Identifying things that I didn't like about myself, things that held me back or that had never been very useful to me. I learned that being a human being with particular experiences requires more introspection, related outrospection, which is a term I heard recently. I needed a more nuanced self-reflection abilities and self-reflexivity in order to move around in my world and my relationships with more positive effect. And I had to start working on that and practicing the new me. Part of that process was identifying all my personal values, my 10 core values, my top 3 core values that would drive me through all areas of the rest of my life. And then try to have strategies and an ideology of how I would truly live by these values without compromise and maintain an awareness of how I was doing that. And so 3, sorry, I skipped a slide, is what I call my dreaming space. And it was just really important to me. It was one of the more fun parts, because recovery actually does have a lot of fun, exciting, inspiring, invigorating stuff in it. Okay, it's not all this horrible slog. It can just be this wonderful, it's the best thing I ever did in my life. So this phase is where I mapped out all the numerous possibilities that appealed to me. And it involved asking myself, if I had absolutely no barriers and no obstacles relating to my age, how much time I had, my finances, my education, and all the different supports available, what would I be doing tomorrow and in the future? And it was only when I truly asked myself this and answered it through lots of consideration and limitless imagination could I ascertain what I really wanted. What was my grand plan for life? And as it happened, I wanted a career in mental health. And so employment and professional development was a huge part of me recovering. And that's not important for everyone. Paid employment isn't important for everyone at the beginning or even later during the recovery. But for me, it was pivotal. So I do often get a bit frustrated when I hear clinicians that haven't actually considered like a proper paid job, let alone an accomplished career for their client, because it's just assumed that it's unrealistic because that person hasn't yet shown the capacity, really hate that word. So just because someone hasn't shown capacity at that point, don't just assume it's not there. Like everyone has that, it's a human thing, we all have capacity to deal and move on. So, 4, these are 2 quite really quick ones. After my dreaming space came writing my life vision statement, my personal mission statement, to always guide me and remind me of exactly where I am going and why. 5, goals. I love goals. Goal setting was consistently derived from my values and my vision and mission statement. So they were always consistent and they still are now. 6, journaling. I've always found journaling in my life, being a sort of diarist journalist, really helpful for so many different reasons. Could probably do 20 minutes on that. And volunteer work was a really fantastic thing for me. It was really beneficial because it created self-esteem and so much more as well. And number 8, second to writing my statements came a self-driven learning period where I studied and researched helpful concepts that I wanted involved in my life. I was interested in PMA and then advanced back to the law of attraction, which I fell in love with. And I also looked at concepts of empowerment, self-advocacy, self-agency, and then self-actualization until I eventually understood self-mastery, which, if there is an end point, there is an end point, but that will probably be it. And it's funny because all of these things were a really important part of my journey, and they were crucial, in fact, and I just don't see any of these concepts appear in anybody's care plans, and I've read a lot of care plans in my job. So our current system doesn't offer any real personal recovery on levels that we're thinking of, because our system just actually isn't set up that way. Despite the fact that we talk about it, discuss it, promote it, we do personal recovery, I'm not sure that services are able to deliver. We don't even have a national definition. We're one of the only 2 countries in the Southern Hemisphere that actually have personal recovery written into national policy, but we can't define what it is. And that doesn't mean that we should, because I think it's quite fitting that something so nuanced and complex isn't defined, but it does make it hard for us to deliver it. And so one of my last points was that it's an issue of self-empowerment, because we can't possibly help someone self-empower when they're only offered one approach of support. Yeah? So the dominant Western model of psychiatry is just all we have. And if we can't offer alternative understandings which people can choose what is best for them, then we don't offer that much. We can pretend by offering our pre-selected choices within our one model and let people make a few decisions here or there. And then we say, I helped someone, I empowered someone today, I gave them the choice. I giggle a bit when I'm in a good mood. When I'm in a less good mood, I get quite frustrated with that. But you see, it's a Hobson's choice, okay? We're offering a Hobson's choice. And it's a Hobson's choice with an paternalistic and often very punitive model, in which the moment that some of us step outside socially palatable behaviour, we're locked up or drugged against our will. Which is actually illegal under an international law that we signed, but we just do it every day, right? So I think my final point on this is that for most of us, we just have to find whatever is self-empower in any way that we can. When you try to give someone some power, that is paradoxically a really disempowering transaction. Power is taken, and if it's being given to you, then you're not empowered. If you have to ask and give and risk, that transaction is just not authentic. And so number 9, nearly done. Quick point, another aspect of my journey was identifying who my idols would be, and my personal and professional mentors, who they would be moving forward. You know, idols don't need to be people you've met, but mentors should be people who you know, who actively engage in your life and learn from. People you respect, admire for particular qualities, and people that you wish to emulate. And lastly, number 10, self-care. Self-compassion and self-nurture became another very important aspect of my life, and I'm still not great at self-compassion, but I do okay with self-nurture. They are quite different things, and I'm still learning in those areas, but I've got the basics. And I'll finish by saying that for me, finding a hobby and engaging in things I enjoyed was not a very big part of my recovery or my identity. It just wasn't a significant part of what I did. And still to this day, I have no hobby. I have nothing that I do just for fun, and I don't even have a particularly strong social life. But I have all that I need. I was always far more focused on a deep meaning in my life and a strong sense of purpose and life direction. So for me, that very much tied into creating a mental health career, where I felt I could contribute to the sector and the lives of people like me. My numerous working roles over the last 7 years provided me with enormous personal and professional satisfaction and fulfilment. And I feel that with all my accomplishments, both personal and professional, several on a larger scale, that I'm thriving in a way I never had before, and arguably thriving in a way that I would never have been able to without my lived experience of severe mental and emotional distress. And so my lived experience has been both the greatest curse and the greatest gift of my life. And I would never undo it even if time travel became possible. So after years of planning and practicing all these things and more, I respect who I am, I love who I am, and I am totally in love with my life. Remember, we should always maintain the perspective that recovery should be the expectation. It's not the exception. Thanks for listening again, guys.